I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Nice.
A little bit hungover, just a bit, because yesterday was the fourth, and
Oh, so
my
true.
friends,
Yes.
my friends invited me to go out, and I was like, man, a responsible person would finish up this little presentation for the boyos.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah. But
there
a
was
little
this
bit of
temptation.
Dionysian energy.
Yep, yep,
Always
exactly,
nice.
exactly.
Always
Hey,
nice.
can you hear me? By the way,
Yes, I can hear you well. I hope I'm not echoing because I
Oh yeah,
moved
in the
flats.
room. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's still totally empty, sort of. Like it's
Yeah, a
just
little bit. It's nice though. I can hear.
yeah,
I
it's
can hear
just
you well.
this is gonna be my bed in the background here, but
Nice,
waiting for the mattress. So
nice.
take another 2 days.
Oh, oh, where'd you sleep last night?
Well, I have this camping equipment because I
Uh
do
huh.
a lot of hiking.
Yeah.
So I just put like 2 to 3 yoga mats and then a camping mat on top of that, and then
Nice.
just my pillows and whatnot. So
Like,
it's a bit basic,
yeah,
but
yeah.
works well.
I think it was somewhere in Nietzsche. He said he talked about how you wanted a nice hard bed to rest on, something like that to where you can remember your dreams. But
Oh yeah, that's good.
yeah, yeah.
It's also so Spartan again. It's like always
Yes,
like
yes, yes.
just
Absolutely,
and I ordered the
absolutely.
one. So the bed, like you see that in the background.
Uh
Like I'm
huh.
gonna put my mattress right on top of there. So it's gonna be like a futon bed. So very
Yeah,
Japanese hard floor style, very low.
yeah, yeah,
And I have high ceilings, so it makes the room very spacious.
yeah.
It's gonna
I
be
bet.
lovely.
I bet it's gonna be nice. All right. So let's jump right in.
Okay.
Boreal alert. Boreal alert.
Boyo alert. Hello everybody. Glad
Hello.
to be back. Hope you're all doing well. And I got a little surprise for me today because Andrew has prepared some slides here, and I'm all
Very
excited
true.
where we're heading
Very
with
true.
that.
Oh yeah. All right. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. It'll be just a little precursor. It'll be a little like the ideas might be a little uh desperate, like disparate in a way, and I'm
Mhm.
hoping to like tie them in towards the end. We're gonna go a little left brain at the beginning, and then maybe we can tie it in with the right brain towards the end. That's
See,
that's my hope, at least.
I'm sure we manage.
Okay. All right.
I've got good enough sleep and I've got my coffee, so we're all good.
I wish I could say the same. All right. Let's see. Let me see if I can share my. Let's see.
I'm
All
really
right.
excited.
Can you see, Jules?
Yes, I can see.
All right.
I'm all
So
hyped.
we
Who are
get
those juicy gentlemen there?
these juicy. Let's see. You're gonna be in the next slide,
I'm gonna be the
and
next
it
slide.
is a striking resemblance,
Is
might
it?
I say? Like yes, like very jarring. But all right. So here, I think this actual picture is a reading of um, maybe the I'm not gonna be able to remember. I think they might be reading uh the Iliad, maybe.
At,
And I think this
they
was
certainly
painted.
look interested.
Yes,
So
and this was painted. I think recently, if I remember correctly, maybe the 17th century or the 18th century, when realism was kind of
it's a hell of
popping
a
at the
picture
time.
though. I'd
I think so
love to
too.
live like that.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
like that's gonna be my interior designing from now on. It's just gonna
Ooh,
be marble
that's
and
a
the open
yes.
sea.
Even your bed. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Um, I had first kicked off this whole presentation reading Natural Right and History
Hmm.
by Leo Strauss, who it's a very difficult line of thought actually. Like any philosopher you read, you have to follow them and see where they end up. Not and he makes a fact value, or that's one of the main points that he makes. And you're gonna see this whole, I guess, talk. We're gonna orbit around epistemology.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd sent you Jung's the structure, or it's on psychic energy. I'm not sure the German
Yes.
translation,
Yes.
and you can kind of tell maybe that now that I'm mentioning that he sets up epistemology of psychology, or he tries his best to, in the first portion of that, and he talks about the final cause, and he talks about causality in a way, and in a way you can see how he gets his idea, or where the origin of his synchronicity idea, because
Mhm.
that was written I think in the 20s, if I'm not
Yeah, I think it was
mistaken.
one of his very early works. There where
Very.
he did a lot of physical practice with his patients with that, like with
Mm,
monitoring heart rates and the sweatiness of the person
yes. Yes,
and
exactly.
breathing rates and whatnot. So very, very much physiologically centered.
And I guess before I get into it, how did the argument hold up to you? Because I found it really compelling.
There's
Um, Go
I can
ahead.
start right away because I had some ideas on that when I was reading that. Some things that I quite liked. So just the basic idea in the first couple tens of pages there. So how he starts off. So he says like, well, we have an understanding of qualia and quantity. So
Hmm.
and but we also have an understanding of what the cyclic as a cyclic to have that measured in a quantitative space. So like in the same way you would say, well, you have an energy like you lift something up and it develops a certain energy level and then you drop it down. So this is your
Yes.
energy level. So the same way Jung conceptualizes there with his psyche in a sense. So
Hmm.
he's looking for ways to conceptualize. Okay, how can I quantify the psychic forces, or how can I quantify the psychic energy? Which he makes in the beginning a very interesting statement right away, and it goes along the line of, well, you find the energy that's stored within the psyche, you find it in its values. And
Yes.
I found that quite interesting. So that's already
Yes.
like set off a lot of motion in my head. So okay,
See,
I'm just gonna yeah,
you said the magic word there, values, because that's what. But keep
yeah.
going. I just want to point that out because we're gonna get into that very shortly. But continue what you were gonna say, Josh.
Okay, okay, beautiful, beautiful. I'm already excited. So, he goes into the realms of values. So we have already the idea of the value hierarchy and whatnot. So what's the highest has the highest energetic value for you, and then it's also the highest psychic value because it manifests in action in the most immediate way in surroundings. Now, something that's really interesting about the work he did there is the way that values are structured, or the way that values arise, and they don't always have to be conscious or unconscious. They don't always have to be conscious.
Mm-hmm.
The way it works is that if you can have unconscious values sitting and guiding you throughout your life because they lack the representation to latch onto to give you an imago of what it is. So imagine like I'm going to follow along. So this is a bit different from how we used to like conceptualize archetypes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine like you're having an instinct. So and the instinct is guiding you like throughout your life. Or imagine being a duckling. So a duckling goes into life and then it has its instinct and it has an instinctual preparation to provide a value of the mother or provide the imago of the mother onto something that works as a mother for it. So the duckling doesn't know about archetypes. Like it has no
Yes.
idea of like king, warrior, magician, lover. It just knows that it needs something that helps it in its instinctual development to be guided with, and that should be the mother. So it latches its image onto a mother or onto whatever it is, but that's how priming goes. So in the same way, you can have a concept that's you can have this instinctual drive that seeks to have an image or that just becomes conscious when it has an image, but it can still guide you along even when you don't have that image rightly presented right at you. So what it also tells you is that the whole structure is a bit reversed when we say so, like you don't necessarily follow archetypes. Like the image of an archetype comes as an afterthought of what was the instinctive pressure. So it rises up, it seeks to find some way to manifest itself, and then there comes the archetype of the image. Why archetypes are culturally so interesting, so that people have similarly instinctive pressures. So there will become an image of what that instinctive pressure is. But it doesn't mean that image necessarily is that what is there at the baseline. It's more like it's that what has been projected. So it's that what has been which has been sort of not found. but the structure of the archetype just begets its structure,
Yes.
and it still has the structure without the name of the instinct. So, if, for example, we read King Warrior Magician Lover, and
Mm-hmm.
the way your instinct or your instinctual pressure would guide you through life, it would still get you to those points. And that just
Yes.
because you have the name, just because you have
Mm-hmm.
the name for it, doesn't mean that it hasn't been there. So the
Yes.
structure, the instinct is still there even without the name. The same way like the kingdom has, or the king has still, the king would still behave the same way as the king does, even if you wouldn't have the name or title. So he
Yes.
just gets that granted, or he just
Mm-hmm.
gets that image of the king, but it still wouldn't be, it would be the same thing, even though the name wouldn't be there. So yeah.
Yes. Okay, you're actually alluding to, I think, one of my final slides, which is so strange. I don't know how you got that's crazy. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but I certainly see it. Uh
Okay.
that's awesome. Okay, so here's my first slide. We're gonna see, let's see. Oh, okay. We have you here. I don't know if you could see this.
Oh,
Does that look how suave you look here?
that's a fine specimen
You
right
have, I
there.
think you have a rapier right around here
Oh, that's
on
so
your side
smooth.
too, and I'm pretty sure the painting, the setting of the painting is in Rome.
Oh, this
So
is so
that's
good.
it's even better. Okay,
This is
so
similar. It's pretty similar to one of my last dreams actually. So this is
oh,
pretty
that's
cool. I really like
crazy.
that.
That's
I
crazy.
didn't have the flow here though, but we're getting
Oh
there.
yeah. All right. So here we can start off with I guess a thought experiment. So
Yeah.
um we were talking about values, and one of the things, I guess I could start out with, one of the things modern science, or its epistemology, it turns a blind eye to values, and you could see this kind of in a, this is alluded to in Sam Harris and Peterson's debate, which I haven't watched in a while, but you can see the fact value distinction was clear there. And I think Peterson makes a case. Um, and I think Sam, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've watched those, but I'm pretty sure Sam thinks that values can be derived from science.
Mhm.
So it's science nested first, and then values arise from the scientific method, or you can. And then Peterson makes a distinction, which even I think he does that as a sort of like I think he could do it either way because he's read Jung, and I'm not sure if he's updated. I know he'd be able to do it both ways, but I think he's just making a case, like a Socratic case, in the event of um, him and Sam, just to make Sam conscious of the fact that it could be constituted differently than
Mhm.
how Sam constitutes in a certain dogmatic way, arising from you have science and then values from the scientific nesting. And I'm reading Strauss. Um, you get the sense that Strauss, one of his main points is he's beckoning the I guess everybody to return in a way to the Socratic method, or the classics. And in a way, McGilchrist does that too. Only it
Mhm.
wasn't Socrates that McGilchrist harkens back on. It's more or less, I think, Heraclitus and the pre-Socratics, if I remember correctly. So, but Strauss, in a more philosophical left brain way, um, harkens back to Socrates, which he actually makes a very strong case. And you can say that Socrates was this left brain autist in a way, but there's something that I come across in Jung.
Can you elaborate on his case a bit more? So
Yeah, sure.
what would Strauss do? So why, or what was the problem he tried to solve, and how did he end up with like saying, okay, we're heading back to Socratic methods?
Yeah, perfect. So he saw the nihilism and the disenchantment that was, I guess, that was alluding to, or that was, I guess, dooming the West in a way. Um, so Strauss, he had he had fled from Germany when the persecution of the Jews started happening, and he had found himself in America. Um, and he got a job. Let's see, I think it was the University of Chicago, and in his 20s, he was very fascinated by Nietzsche, actually. So, and I think somewhere it says that he said that from 22 to 30, he had believed everything Nietzsche had said. It's like he was just completely enchanted, and he actually has a seminar on Nietzsche
What
online.
was the result of that?
Oh, he's actually like I have this strange draw to people that are like very very apt, I guess, pedagogical teachers in a way. Like I have this just enchanting draw to them, and I think I had stumbled across his I think it was his Nietzsche seminar, and I had first started listening, and there was just something alluring, like a siren call, with his. He had that harsh German accent, and he was speaking about Nietzsche, and it's like you can tell like this guy had some critical engagement with his thought, like, and I didn't know he had studied him for what, probably 10 years in his 20s. So there was just something that was drawing me to that. So I watched that, and I'd read Beyond Good and Evil, I think, before, and a lot of that seminar just shifted it more into focus. Um, in a time that the only time after that that has, I guess, um, shown more light on it would be uh, Jung's Zarathustra seminar, which was, I think, definitely taken in a different way than Strauss does, because Strauss looks at it through a political lens, which is strange in and of itself. Because I, well, we'll just leave it at that, because it's very different from Peterson and Jung, because it's a very different take. I'm not sure that, because instead of ending up on the individual like a psychologist would, Strauss always ends with the state, which is a
Interesting.
it's yes, it's more of a collective, like if we're talking final calls, or like the way you're looking at it, he always ends like he does focus on the individual often, but he always ends with the state, or like the political atmosphere. And I I'm more apt to take the individual stance, probably because of the zeitgeist. But nevertheless, it's an interesting take, and there's been some things in natural right and history that have really caught me off guard. Like I'm gonna get into this
Oh yeah.
about
Okay.
the um the thought experiment, but
Okay.
there's something that, let's see if I can find it. Um, well, I won't do that right now. There's actually there's no word for history in the Old Testament.
Hmm.
So it's just these strange like little snippets that you're like, he's trying to get at something here, and he does it. Everybody who and he knows how to read Latin and Greek, kind of like Jung in a way. So it's just that allure that brought me to it. But reading through it, it made me grab the structure and dynamics of the psyche when I was looking through it, and I stumbled across that essay, and I was like, I need to send this to Jules. Like I was like, because I remember that you had that talk with Jimmy Boyle about
Yeah.
and it was orbited around consciousness and the mind body problem, and I think we had
Yeah.
talked about that beforehand. And like I was like, how did I not remember this essay? It's so good, and it he thinks about it like thoroughly and all the way through, and I was like, Jules is gonna like this. He has
Yeah.
to. But anyway, okay.
There's okay.
So
Before I round
yeah,
on
go ahead.
similar related things, now go ahead with the thought experiment.
Okay. So here's something from, well, I won't say. So, oop, you're in the way a little bit. Let me move you. All right. So, how totally different did the world appear to medieval man? For him, the earth was eternally fixed and at rest in the center of the universe, circled by a sun that solicitude bestowed its warmth. Men were all children of God, under the loving care of the Most High, who prepared them for eternal blessedness. And all knew exactly what they should do and how they should conduct themselves in order to rise from a corruptible world to an incorruptible and joyous existence. Such a life no longer seems real to us, even in our dreams. Science has long ago torn this lovely veil to shreds. That age lies as far behind us as childhood, when one's own father was unquestionably the handsomest and strongest man on earth. So, this is Jung here, and the reason I incorporated this was to try to throw you into how it would be like a few generations before him or before us. You have to add a little bit of imagination here. So here is I guess it's in a way Jung is kind of winking at you and trying to tell you, hey, our epistemology and our science, it's really it's leading us in a way, and technological progress is leading us in a way to where, hey, it's going to be a problem very soon. And he had written this. Let's see, when was it? This was 1928. So he's kind of like, hey, there needs to be a compensation here in science, because we've shrinked from our values, like in a way, and in a way modern science is willfully blind of the values that they and the values that they how would you say it? They're just willfully blind to the value judgments that they make, and that's written into the scientific method. So imagine you walking into a room, okay, and you focus on one thing. Let's say you're going, let's say, a classroom, and you focus on your desk as opposed to all the other things in the room. So you focus on that desk, whether it's conscious or unconscious. In a sense, it really doesn't matter. You focus on that desk, so you pinpoint it out. So you value that desk as opposed to all the other things that could be looked at in the room. Then you start making your way to the desk, and then you may sit down, and then you look at what maybe the teacher, or you look at something. So in a way, you're valuing that thing opposed to all the other things in the room. So there's no way to get away from value judgments in a way. So if you take that and you transplant it to the scientific endeavor, or the scientific I guess endeavor, you would say, well, why has this, and Nietzsche actually makes this point in Beyond Good and Evil. So why would a scientist choose this experiment as opposed to all the infinite other experiments they could have potentially come up with? So there's a value judgment right there. It's like, well, they value this experiment opposed to all the other experiments that they could have made. So there's no way to get away from value judgments. It needs to be, and Jung would make the argument, it needs to be conscious. That way we can be aware of it. Otherwise, it stays in the unconscious, and you're in a way willfully blind about it. So, you have any thoughts about that, Jules?
Yeah, I have. So I've thought about this in terms of Nietzsche and Jung and Nietzsche's Overman in some sense. So we still have the with values and all, the master of re-evaluating all values.
Yeah.
And he has a fair point in that, and also from a Jungian perspective, I think. So from the essay that we've read. So where we were heading is, okay, you have instincts, or you have the psychic, the quantitative energy of the psyche will have its approximation within values. So then you can see, like, the higher the higher the value, the more it's like the psychic quantity of energy that you have it. So you would call it the libido. So the stronger the libido energy that would be attached to that value. So because you would live it out in the open sphere. Okay. So now there's several layers on that, which I think Jung pursues in this path to individuation, to seek the best alignment of that, what those values are. So what would get you the highest psychic energy, so that you have, and where you're coming from. So what do we mean by that? You can have what Jung would call complexes, when something else or somebody else would place a value within your sphere of, say, psyche, and you would follow that value system, which isn't inherently yours. So there would be a value placeholder. So you'd follow that. Now, what we had earlier on is that values are also very much important from instinctual development. So you can have sort of like a psychic parasite as a value or a value that isn't inherently in your, whatever your life path is, or your individual development. You can have that externally implanted in you, and then you have a complex which will be pursuit of a certain value system that isn't inherently yours. So in terms of individuation in that, and it would be, well, this is something that would be in the path, because it wouldn't be aligned with what would be which would be inherited in your genomic seed, for a sense. So I try to give another example of this. Okay, the way you work with life force or psychic energies is, imagine you have the globe, and we're gonna be very quantitative about this. Okay, you have the globe, and you have a lot of rivers there, and you're planning to extract the most of the highest amount of energy from rivers via building a dam. So you look at like you sort of have, like, you can sort of like sculpt a lot of what you can do with the world, but you can't sculpt like the whole mountains. You can't move Mount Everest from A to B.
Yeah.
But you can, but as engineer, you can build a dam where the water flows. So imagine your psychic forces there. You want to get access to those rivers and to those energies. So if you are a good engineer and you're well equipped with the landscape, and you did your measurements correct and whatnot, then you would build a dam somewhere where the active psychic energy or stream would flow, top down from the Himalaya. You would build the dam there, and get the reservoir of that energy. So then you can have access to this energy, and then it's like, great energy level there. I can use it. I can make all the good stuff with it, and what I can do generally. Now imagine you having something of an idea or value system that's not inherently yours, like planted somewhere. So it's like somebody coming along, building a dam somewhere where you don't know. So, and it's accessing that energy. So there could be chances where this energy or this dam is being built somewhere down the river, or somewhere in the desert where there's nothing at all. It could also be that it's built up the line of the river, so like right on top of the string. So you have something that takes a lot of the energy that's already stored and just like on top of where your energy consumption should be, which would be your instinctual drive, which would guide you through, you get the energy, and then it would guide you through life. Then there's something like that's not what has been built from you, but it's an external source and has been built there. So then you have a system in place where what is the quantitative energy of what could have been is being lowered in level. And in that sense, like, I'm being very sort of engineering mindset about this, but in that sense, if you want to look for the best place to build a dam, or the best place, or the best engineer that you want to be, you have to make sure that you map, quote unquote, your own territory. But this is akin to the know thyself maxim. So you have to know what is yours in idea, and you have to know what is yours. Then also in epistemology, like what is yours in knowledge. So
Yeah.
now we
Yeah.
have a lot of detachment from a lot of sources, what could be like verified of knowledge. So we having a lot of the um, you know, be it school and what. So we have a lot of big influence of ideas coming
Mm-hmm.
all the way.
Mm-hmm.
But we are less concerned of living out those ideas. So it's all become very, I would say, very jargony. You know, it becomes
Yes.
very
Yes.
like abstract and technical, and in terms of that, it's not really used in that what should be like a process of living.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really used in the unfolding of what would be life. So we have a big split there. But then again, we rely too much
Certainly.
on that perspective, where we just take the step back from what's the engagement with life and just all the time just engage with the ideas around it, which to have their place because they can do
Sure. Sure.
some sort of frame script, frame flip.
Mm-hmm.
But then because there's less so of active living component in it, which the
Yeah.
guys in the slide beforehand, they're laying down by the beachside on the marmor, like they embodied it more, and
Yes.
they had more confirmation of living and theories with that, which we haven't. And so tying this back to Jung and Nietzsche on that would be the last point. So what I see with the overman in that sense, and Nietzsche would say, well, you have to craft your own values or morals.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see with that is the acknowledgement of what Jung describes earlier and what would be the instincts. So you have to craft the path that your instincts can unfold, so you can access that realm, and that might include on the individual basis re-evaluation of all that which isn't yours. So this would be morals.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was also because they can be a complex at times, but they can also not be. It's
Yes.
like
I see.
some are overlapping and some aren't. So yeah.
You're tying them together in a way. I like that, Jules. You actually, that's quite a case, actually. Um, just to carry this on a bit, we think, I guess this would add to your point in a way. I had this slide because just to kind of I guess throw in a I guess I in a alluding to what you were saying, like imagine just reflecting on Jung's take. Um, Imagine walking in here. It's like, what do you value? What do you look at here? This is Rome, I think. This is Saint, maybe Saint Peter's. It's like, well,
I think it is.
yeah. So where do your eyes go here? It's like there's there's a certain glory or a certain I guess majesty in here. It's like your eyes don't know where to land in a way. It's like it's everywhere and nowhere, and it's like it's it's hard to value one thing because everything's of value in a way. So it's like your eyes start to flutter everywhere, and it's like you try to take it in as a whole. I think I had actually got this idea from, maybe you'll remember. I think I might have gotten it from McGilchrist. Does he say somewhere in the Master and His Emissary? Am I remembering correctly? I couldn't find it. I guess he makes a scenario where someone walks up to a I guess it'd be a cathedral, and he makes the case that it would be so much more, or it'd be so much different in a way than someone walking up to it now. Was that McGilchrist that I'm remembering that, or is that someone else?
I I don't know,
It might be
certainly.
someone else. I don't know. I
But he talked a lot about in the way how like you have to live in the environment to
mm-hmm.
like to witness that what you I think he called like the in betweenness. So you
Yes,
have
yes.
to have a
What's the
deeper
German word
understanding.
for it? You had told me it's off. What is it? Do you remember?
Oh, that was another. You mean Aufhebung?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that's another one. That one is really interesting. So in the betweenness that McGilchrist describes in sense is like you have to get a sense of the relation of quote unquote objects, how they relate to each other, and this is all because in his ways of knowing those are all iterated on different, like on viscerally perceptive levels,
mm-hmm.
and those are in some way fundamentally different than the levels of what would be like mere language or mere concepts, and we stick with concepts for now. So it would be like fixed terms. Okay. McGilchrist, in many ways similar to what Heraclitus does, is it's an
Yes.
exploration of how do I perceive the fluidity of concepts. The that the fixed things that you are working with, they have the place and whatnot, but how to perceive what is everything like
Hmm.
always in flow. So and there's a great word which takes this, which builds upon this concept. So imagine like you're witnessing things and how they relate to each other. Now, in the prospect of how you are unfolding in your life and how you're unfolding in your terms of how you see things, is certain sense of, well, that was fixed, has been there, it will get transmitted into another state and then will change. So the same way that you have a flower which would, it
Yes.
would
Yes.
work, would go from
Bloom.
from a seed to
Hmm.
its leaves and then bloom into a flower.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
so you have the whole process. And there's a word for that where you have things that are at one stage and they get transferred to the next. Even though they vanish, they're still there. In
Hmm.
German, it's called aufheben or aufhebung. So
Hmm.
the word means something like you have something very valuable and you store it away and you don't toss it away. It doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to use it in a sense. Like it's not, that's not really there. But when you have something like the seed of a plant is being aufgehoben when it gets transducted into the flower. So
Yes.
it still was there, like the physical essence of that
Hmm.
has vanished, but that what it was has been shifted to another state. So in that sense, it's still aufgehoben because it had something of value. It just became something different. You
Yes.
can't get to
So
that place without it.
this is actually kind of exciting. I don't know. Do you see the consilience there between that and Jung's case about the final cause? Because I certainly do.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
he makes the case of um for everyone who doesn't know. I don't know if you've alluded to this in a way. Um he makes a critique of the causal view of um I guess epistemology, and he says, hey, look, the final view, which is akin to teleology in a way, but it's not exactly it, because teleology is implying that you know the natural end, when final is just saying there is an end. So this is a difficult way to it's a difficult, I guess. The flower would be that might be the best way to look at it. You see a flower, like I think Jung says somewhere, you plant a seed and it will grow to become an oak tree. It's like it has a trajectory in a way. It has a life to live, and then he makes a lot of his I guess individuation principle implies that we have a spiritual side that is going to grow, and it's like whether we get on its good side or not um, is up to the individual, but it's going to grow regardless. And it's like you might want to ally yourself on the spiritual growth side, and you might want to become aware of it, because in that way you can grow, or you can help, I guess, fertilize it or cultivate it in a way.
yeah. And in that sense, is also like there's a nice simplicity in that also in some sense because it's just it's just really really natural. And there's sort of
Yes.
just just let it flow, bro. But it's
Yes.
sort of like some part of that is that way. And there's also this, because it's this perpetual process. There's also this which you alluded to with the finality. This
Hmm.
something akin to like logical like schizophrenia, where things are causal but also final.
Hmm.
So you have to have a look at the things in this causal process, and then it's very mechanistic view how they're like interlinked and work further. And
Yes.
then also have the like Nietzsche's work and like almost like how to become what you are. And then you also have the finality of it already implicit in this. So
Hmm.
you have to, and this is yes, this mirrors in a lot of senses or in a lot of ways the way how you engage life in the daytime mode or nighttime mode, where you always like switch in between places. Is where you come in nighttime and you're tracking back into where things are getting like they're working themselves around whatever is like your individuality or your individuation in the sense of all the dreams and whatnot.
Ah,
But
yes.
then again, you also go into the way of like living and witnessing those in between as a relationship in the data mode, which is from being like from a logical or ego-driven side, let's say. So not the best word for it, but more on a quote-unquote mechanistic view. So there's more
Mm.
like a casual or causal relationship with your engagement, which then gets shifted into another mode of being. And then you're always in this process of unfolding and, and aligning yourself with this, well, let's say individuation instincts. But they're always bound to be like in this schizophrenic state where they're always, they're preceded, but you have
Mm.
to fertilize them. And then also you have to give them space to grow. So it's very interesting how
Yeah.
this is not a concept that is in no place or shape or form to being like boxed in one thing unless you encompass everything at once, which would
Yes.
then again go to the Yunus Mundi, or what also
Hmm.
I think McGilchrist also had a term for that, but I forgot about it. Where it's like, well, you can
Wow.
only perceive differentiation of things when you can also can only put it in categories when you separate. But then again, you
Hmm.
always have to acknowledge, well, like there's some arbitrariness in that because it comes from the same thing. So like microcosm and microcosm where you are at, then again is, well, like seeds planted where I better live, you know.
Yeah. 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 Certainly. Um, and the this is it's kind of this is kind of a I guess a side note, but well, when you had alluded to the day and the nighttime, I guess in the daytime, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jules. You in the day it would be more, I guess, causally viewed from the ego perspective, and at
Mm,
nighttime you had mentioned the more schizophrenic I guess tendency for the psyche to be in. Um, when you had said that, immediately I thought, well, in dreams, in this way, the the causality of time is kind of very strange. I don't know if you've ever had it to where, like, I have a train station here when
mm,
when I go to bed sometimes, and it's strange. You wake up, let's say that the train started like honking their horns, and it's like you wake up and it's like the whole dream was centered, like that maybe the center of the honking of the horn was like in the middle of the dream causally,
mm,
but
mm,
you woke up like in a split second, um from from the dream, so it couldn't have been in the middle of the dream. So in a way, time is it's I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but in a way it's very strange how when you wake up, everything, all the schizophrenic, I guess, images from the dream, when you wake up, all come into alignment. Does that make sense?
mm.
It's
Yeah.
like it's like things that were first and last, they become, it's a strange thing if you become conscious of it, because like that, just take the horn of the train, that's the thing that woke me up. But
Yeah.
in a way, it was in the center of the dream, the whole narrative of the dream, that was, it was smack in the middle of the dream. And it's like it's a strange, the only way I could think of it in a coherent way is that they come in images in a way, and
Mm,
then when, upon waking up, they come into alignment and your consciousness puts it into a narrative.
mm.
Does that make sense? Like, in a way, they were, I guess, orbiting images, and then you can throw it into alignment. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I'll be clarifying, I think, so in a way that so the way I meant to phrase it properly better. So I was talking about like some sort of like schizophrenic logic. So what I
Mm-hmm.
meant by this is, so when you have those different modes of knowledge in the terms that that's schizophrenic, so they are in some way they're opposites to each other, or in some way you have to switch between those two to get a better fact picture of how you're living. This doesn't
Okay.
necessarily mean that the dream itself is just like, I didn't phrase it properly, but that the dream life itself is like being more schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
It's more, it has a different viewpoint. So what I meant by schizophrenic in that term was you have
More.
those
Like
those
right brain? Is that what in a way or not really? It's just a different take.
mm, it's not, it's a bit of a different take. So
Okay.
you can say so like right hemispheric stuff, which would be like more the inverlatedness.
Hmm.
But you have to have this combination of those two. So what's a better example? Okay, you can't live with just being in daytime mode, and you can't live with just being in nighttime mode. So
Hmm.
the living aspects of what you do, like when you engage in life, or what is the engagement in life as such, would be is bound to take those both halves of the causality into or the logic into play. So which one would be more like the finality of things, and the other one would be more the um,
Ah, okay.
the
I think I see what you're
mechanism,
trying to say.
the causal
Yes,
side of it.
I think I
So
see what you're saying now, Jules.
yeah,
Okay,
okay, good,
awesome.
good.
And when you were talking about that, that reminded me of a scene in Zarathustra where Nietzsche comes up to he comes up to a small, very small man, um,
Yeah,
and the small man had this huge ear, and that was Nietzsche's. I think he called it the inverse cripple, and that was his very
yeah,
one-sided man. And he's like, he's not
yeah,
very. He only has the causal view, or he only has the final view.
yeah,
He's not a whole enough man to be able to take in both
yeah.
views or see them for what they are. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's also
certainly.
like this and he's also the perfect example of being not also also being a jargonite and whatnot, but someone
Yes.
who's not engaged in life. So like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
um, you can switch in the other domain where you have something that is so I'm thinking of a good example, but when you have somebody who's just so set in his finality of things that
Mm-hmm.
there's like no engagement also whatsoever. So you can have
Yeah.
this switch into where you just engage or not engage with life because you're just looking at all the concepts and causal domains, but you can also
Yeah.
go into which would be maybe a bit of the hippy dippy flowery type of where everything is set in stone.
Yeah. There's not
It's
very
like
many cases of that in our age, I would think. So it's hard to draw. It's hard to find an example. I see, but I'm sure
yeah.
there probably are examples.
So yeah, that's just some ideas on that, just on
Yeah.
the other.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Let's see what I have next because I don't remember actually. Ah, okay.
Oh
This
boy.
is
Okay.
So you had alluded to Heraclitus.
Can I read
Uh.
this?
Yes. Go ahead, Jules.
Okay,
Be my
just
guest.
sweet. Quote. Now, what is it? What constitutes a value in all these cases? According to one view, the desire for the thing, whatever the principle may be, whether it is health or profit or whatever it is. But if a man desires something and yet disapproves of that desire, loathes that desire, despises himself for that desire, regardless of whether he succeeds in suppressing the desire or not, can this desire still be said to be his value? This is still a factual question. Is this a value or is this not a value? The two answers which are possible, it is a value or it is not a value, are equally factual because of the factual character of the question. The factual question is this: is there or is there not an essential difference between desire and choice? I mean, desire, anything you desire, even if you hate yourself for desiring it, fight your desire, still you desire it. And choice means that what you truly decide in favor of. Now, the first view, the view that desires the thing which constitutes value, is characterized by blindness to that obvious difference and necessary difference between desire and choice. On factual grounds, we are compelled to say that a value is an object of choice as distinguished from mere desire. This means that the different views of the is therefore, is there not, is there or is there not an essential difference between desire and choice, lead to different views of the ought or of the values. By this argument, indeed, you arrive only at the former characteristics, very general characteristics. For example, if someone has a desire, say, for drugs, according to one view, this would be his values, drug addiction. But from a more perceptive view, one would say, of course there is no value, because there's no choice. This man has not even the possibility to reflect and to resist. How can you call this a value? The factual question regarding this existence or non-existence of the difference between desire and choice, it decides the question of what kind of things are and are not values. A value judgment. It is inseparable. The is, i.e., the pertinent is, pertinent. For example, such phenomena as desire and choice that is, which is relevant to value evaluation, is not neutral regarding values. Right.
Do
Okay,
you
that's
do you have any clue maybe to who this is? Because I had read this and I was like, this is very strange for the person who it is. It's very psychoanalytic in a way. But do you have any idea who it is?
it's
Did you get a German view from it?
um
Oh,
no, I'm not
no.
sure on the is and ought. I think probably some I'm not sure. Is it Hegel?
It's also very left brain. This is actually Strauss, and
Oh, okay.
he's making a Socratic case. All he's doing is questioning here. So
Yeah.
you see how there's a Socratic, or in that way he follows Nietzsche and Socrates very much in his questioning. So he 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 makes this crucial questioning point in a way to for people to become more conscious or to ask the essential questions that they should in life, you know.
Mhm.
So in a way he's continuing the Socratic method.
I really
um
like it. There's also
yeah,
something
yeah.
in the it's good always to measure up in what the words are. So value in German Werte. It's
Hmm.
also it has a similar duality that has in English. So it's on one thing, it's that which is valuable, auf mit der höchsten Wertigkeit, but it's also like the amount of things. So it
Hmm.
just always has both. So in some sense, the and this is something against the intellectualization of this, even though I think the process is the important thing. But imagine you have something that is implicit, like the word itself, value is like living in two different domains, and one is in a quantitative domain, and one is a
Hmm.
qualitative domain, with the very word itself that we have described as those things. So the root word of that is implying that you can't make a different differentiation with this word in itself and get an answer for both things. So it's like there's always has to be, and like this is the the jumping and the logical side. You always have to, like, the very word describes to you its usage. How do you use it? Like on
Hmm.
both domains, you
Yeah,
can't just hit it in a point where you just say it just has one applicable use.
yeah, yeah.
Makes it so strange in terms of us to work with it from a logical perspective and also from a language perspective itself, because we want to nail it down to a certainty where it describe the solution, because that's what we're going through when
Hmm.
we use
Hmm.
language. We want to have work it through it like a logical solution of what this thing should provide its answer for, but it can't, because it had like it works in different logical domains from the
Hmm.
very beginning. So this is, even though like when we're working with this concept, the the root word will find its truest purpose in manifestation, then again where it comes from, and that would be like in the domain of living it. So you
Yes,
can't make the
yes.
distinctual, like, you can't make the logical leaps and arrive to a conclusion with something that's in its presupposition is derived from something that's within the living domain, which doesn't mean that this shouldn't be valuable, haha,
Hmm.
to go with this at the domain of, like, philosophical discourse. But I think the question, and this is so good what Strauss does here, with this questioning period, like he brings it back. So
Yes, yes, exactly.
it's like, okay, well, so we have this word like value, value, value. Then he's just like firing like a barrage of questions at it, and it's like, okay, what does it really mean then with
Yes.
is and ought? Like, what does that entail then in the sense when you really look at it? So
Hmm.
this is the so I think it's probably pretty smart to say from Strauss, um, that to bring back the Socratic method in there, to just like dissect what those words are that we're
Yeah, yeah.
working with, and then it's just, oh, okay.
That's what
But
this
yeah,
certain part just shone forth. I was like, this is really like this was actually done extemporaneously in a seminar. I think it was
okay,
transcribed. I think it might have been a actually you had said Hegel. This might have been a Hegel seminar. I think it might have been. So
okay,
he has one. You could find it on I think University of Chicago has a few of his transcripts and also audios. Um,
that's good.
they're a
Because
little
I'm having new route to do some walks at the nighttime here, which is
yeah,
beautiful at the
yes,
riverside. So I appreciate every source on that. So that's great.
yes. All right, so let's see what do I have next? Oh, okay. So yeah, so I mentioned the Socratic method. So I guess reflecting upon actually what Socrates did, because you can. Oh, you know what? Let me mention Jung's take, because we often think about Socrates as a left brain autist, right? In a certain, I mean, in a certain way, you don't want to be too harsh on him, but um, you have to remember that he also talked about his daimon, the voice in his head
Yeah.
that spoke to him. And there's one instance, I don't remember where it was. It might have been Aristophanes' clouds, maybe. I'm not too sure, but there's an instance where his daimon tells him he needs to learn an instrument, and
Hmm.
it's like just imagine it, this old man. It's like this old ugly man who goes around questioning things, and his voice in his head says, "You need to learn an instrument."
This is so funny, actually.
And
I
it's
love it.
like,
That's like
okay.
being
And then he
imagine like
follows
you
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
like good on him. Hey, this is
Yes.
so cool. It's like
So that was, it's like, hey, you're being way too much of a left brain autist. You need to go learn an instrument.
it's like
Like do
he's the
something.
prototype of a
Yes.
4chan poster where you just like
Yes. So it's like,
and
hey,
something
go
in him
live a
tells
bit.
yeah, go live a bit, just
Yes, yes. So
how about you go outdoors and then live a bit? And then he's like,
yes.
no, I have to ask questions.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. And I think he had actually, I think somewhere in, I think it was, there's another allusion to it. It's not an Aristophanes, I don't think, but he alludes to actually he's going to classes. So like later on, it's like he followed his diamond, like he's going to actual musical classes with a bunch of younglings. So it's so like all you have to do is imagine just this old man with a bunch of younger people in Athens, and he's
Yeah.
learning this instrument probably like against his will, just following his diamond. And he's like, "What am I doing?" And it's like he's probably horrible at it, but it's
It's also good to reminder to start
yes,
with those things like
yes,
young, just
hmm,
do the living and maybe do the
yes,
philosophizing then maybe a bit down the road.
yes.
um
That there's a Latin phrase for that. I'm not gonna be able to bring it to mind, but it's something akin to first one must live, then one must philosophize.
yeah, yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
like, and
so
we all and so many like a bunch of books on the wall here. It's like it's just like,
yes.
oh, I have to think.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to balance the two, and sometimes we don't do it all that great, but that's all right,
Yeah.
as long as, hey, if we keep it in consciousness, which we'll get to later. Oh nope, and we'll get to later.
Oh, okay.
um
Oh, I sense some juiciness coming up.
yes,
What's happening
okay.
there?
So I guess, yeah, this one's, I guess I touched upon that whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
um so I let's go back to Strauss for a minute, because
Hmm.
what he does in Natural Right and History is, you can imagine modern philosophy takes two, and I got this from Arthur Holmes, which he was an American, I guess, philosopher, I believe. But you can imagine the green line here
Yeah.
as the empiricist tradition of
Hmm.
philosophy. So
Hmm.
for all the boyos who don't have that much I guess, background in it, the empiricist tradition, as opposed to, or in contradistinction to the rationalist tradition, um, focuses much more on the findings in science, as opposed to more of a, in the blue line, you can think, um, would be more of a mathematical approach or a logical approach. So you can imagine the green line being more of a natural sciences progression
Hmm.
in a way, and then the blue line being more of a logical progression. And actually, these two converge. Like you can imagine the progression of time here, and you see how they intersect here. Um, at that intersection is actually Immanuel Kant. in his Critique of
Mm.
Pure Reason, which he brings the two traditions together, and he makes a critique of the rationalist tradition. So he says reason can't bring us our, I guess, reason can't bring us what we need, and neither can science in a way. And then what should have happened in that conjunction is that we focus more on what the existentialists do, which would be, if we continue the green line, we see the scientific tradition actually kind of morphs into the existentialists um, through the progression of time. But what should have happened in that conjunction, and this is kind of a value judgment in my case, so take that for what you will. But I think we should have started living and maybe even gone back to the Socratic principles there. But these two in that conjunction, they just continued on to be more and more, and you could see the lines are going apart. They become even more distant after Kant, which is in a way, I guess, maybe Kant handled it in the wrong way, in too of a left brain autist way, you know. Because if you going through the Critique of Pure Reason, it's actually a slog. It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's like boring, and it's like, I think Jung was interested in it actually, and he takes a lot from it. He used to study Kant on the weekends, and I had got the Critique of Pure Reason because I was interested in it in a while, but it takes so much, I guess, energy or libido to get through it, because it's not glittering. It's not glittering like Nietzsche or anything. It's not exciting.
It's really
it's
really hard to read. So also in German, like it's not the translation or whatnot. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's difficult. So, and I think Kant admits somewhere that he's not the best writer, but still, it's like I don't know how you would have gone about it in more of a right brain holistic way, because I guess lived in a way to where
well, it's also the nature of this subject, like when you critique rationality, like from the rational standpoint, it's like you have to make your anchor points on that somehow.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. I can't see another way out of it. But all right, so that's pretty much. I just wanted to allude to the fact that these two have their intersection in Kant, and I think Hegel would be more on the green, on the on the blue line. Oh, I think I misspoke earlier. I think the blue line turns into existentialism instead of the green. And then existentialism actually harkens back to ethics in a strange way. I'll just allude to that because it's hard to, unless you know, I guess, existentialism in any familiar way, it's hard to make that case. You just have to, I guess, you just have to take it on faith that they harken back to more ethical approaches, I guess. All right, so I'm trying to think what I have next because I want to lead up into it if I can. Yes, I remember.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Jules. If you wanted to say something.
No, you can head into your like presentation mode, and then you can see what's the next slide.
Okay. I remember what I have here. Okay. So this will be this will be a bit of a leap. This is, I think the actual picture is Christ. He's calling to Saint Matthew, I think, here. But it's actually, I'm gonna read from a portion, or actually you can read because you're a hell of a orator in a way.
Yeah, all right. Let me see the quote. Then I hit it.
So let me move here. So this is from Luke. I'll elaborate on it after because there's another part after this that you can read also. But there's a particular point that I want to make after these two slides. But go ahead, Jules.
Okay, sweet. Okay, I'm starting with quotes from Luke 6. And it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. And certain of the Pharisees said unto them, Why do ye that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days? And Jesus answering them said, Have you not read so much as this, what David did when himself was an hungered, and they which they were with him? How he went into the house of God, and did take and eat the shewbread, and gave also to them that were with him, which it is not lawful to eat but for the priests alone. And he said unto them, That the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath.
Okay.
End quote.
So before I get into the next slide, just it's hard to imagine how radical of a statement that is, especially to a Jewish, I guess, the Jewish people of the time. Essentially, Christ is saying here that his moral endeavor supersedes the Sabbath or the Jewish tradition. So it's like, in a way, he's writing, he's sealing his fate here. You know, it's like,
Mhm.
no wonder this man got crucified. It's like, what a radical thing to say in that time. It's like,
It's also the what we had earlier on with the Oberman re-evaluating the morals and
yes,
values of
yes,
his
good
time,
Jules.
and then
Yes.
going into that from perspective what's innate in his life development,
Mhm.
what's he been sent out to do. In that sense, you would. This is something interesting with Strauss, I think, actually. So that the way that Strauss ends up with this state as being the unified principle, then at the end, from being like emerging from those, I would assume, in some sense, from those people then again who at the local level, individuate or individuated in
Mhm.
their sense, and then would arise at a common something more clearer perspective of what society would be. So this is I find it sort of interesting that he would call it state and not something like
Yeah, yeah. He actually calls it regime. Somewhere like he uses a
that makes
bunch of
more
names.
sense,
He uses
I
a
think.
bunch of names. He starts from the classical and works his way. It turns from regime to there's a bunch. I think not conviction. It's something with culture. It's not. He uses culture, but it's not there. But I just wanted to point that out. He uses regime, and it's like he introduces it very tentatively because you can imagine someone reading, like someone in our modern times. They start
Yeah.
reading this, and it's like the regime, and it's like, okay, okay, hold on. But no, he does make a case, and then he takes the word in its etymological like root, and he traces it. So yeah,
What
you actually are pointing out.
where does it like etymologically, like, where does it belong through? Because I'm somewhat familiar, but I forgot. Like,
I
what's the precise word root?
I'm not positive. I don't even know if he put. I don't know if he uses the etymology, but he what he's doing essentially is harkening back to the classical Greek, and I he understand like he reads the original language, but and I don't think in natural right and history he actually gives an account of the actual the root, but he takes it, I guess, on principle. He's like, it was the classics called it a regime, or they called it there was something before regime, and I can't bring to mind. My unconscious isn't working as well as it should be with me today. But
No worries.
but it was regime and something else. But you can see clearly in natural right and history, um, there's a
I
progression of it.
because I wonder, because like something like regime, something that's being regimented, with something that's being stirred. We
Mm-hmm.
just had some associations with that, like with wagon culture and whatnot. So something that has its path and it's just getting stirred. So it's
Yes,
sort of
yes.
like, this would, because this is purely speculative, but it would then tie back into something. There's something that has the finality, which would be the wagon, but also has
Mm-hmm.
the causality, like how it would go through
Yes,
like the its
yes. I see.
environment. So this is just an idea, but
Yeah,
I have to look that one up. Or yeah, we should look that up. What now?
yes.
Like what he calls that. It's really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're gonna make me want to go back and look to see. I had read that a while back. It's more towards the beginning, but
Yeah.
we had talked about Christ here. We had looked at Christ, but what Jung does here, and it's very strange. And I borrowed this method from Jung actually, and I borrowed this verse because Jung brought it to light for me. Um, no one looks at the man, the Pharisee, that or no one that on first, I guess, on first pass, you don't think of the Pharisee, or you don't look at him as much as you do Christ. But um, there's a take right here. Let's see. Let's see if I can go next. Look, have it go get at this, Jules.
Okay, all right.
You don't have
Cool.
to read the Greek.
Yeah, I'm just cool because I can't. I'm
Yeah,
working
go
on
ahead.
that. Okay.
Go ahead.
Quote from Cambridge Greek Testament for Schools and Colleges. In the famous Cambridge manuscript, the Codex Pisai, there's here added the following passage. On the same day, observing one working on the Sabbath, he said to him, O man, if indeed thou knowest what thou dost, thou art blessed. But if thou knowest not, thou art accursed and transgressor of the law.
Look, I'll
This,
stop you right there, Jules,
okay,
because that's just to frame that. That's a call to consciousness.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's like when Jung shown that, it's like um so the moral, I guess the moral burden falls on our conscious decision and our responsibility here. And
yeah,
it's a very radical um moral call, and you can understand why they didn't include that portion of um that they found in the Cambridge manuscript. You can imagine why they didn't put in the Synoptic Gospels, because it throws more light on, and it's more responsibility on the individual here.
oh yeah,
I
yeah.
don't.
There's something so interesting, but it's like you can only evaluate that which you have been like reflected, or
Yes,
that which you
yes,
have reflected, and there's
yes.
also an obligation to not do those with
Mm-hmm.
the things that you
Yeah.
actually have no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
Yeah.
so I think this is a great. This ties in some sense back into the Socratic method, and how do we make knowledgeable
Yes.
that which we want to reflect with, um, on, better said, to reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the certain ways of knowing things. Something I think was very key that he goes about this a lot, like with 4 ways of knowing. Okay, it's really it's a simpleton approach to question everything with just one way of knowing it. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say, and this would be something that we particularly see with the jargonites, where I say, they pull at words in a sense. So
Yeah.
they take words and then they dissect words from this like very very regressive frame, which would be, okay, I'm trying to make a concept stick to one particular word, and then I use it in
Mm-hmm.
isolation, and then I work with that. Okay, so one thing that you see there is like the small brain approach is like doesn't really lead to like what is conscious reflection of what it is for
Yes.
you, I'd say, because the way one does know, there's this, again, this multitude of approaches to it, and up until, and this is not to be, to be like, in some sense, in the way that's described here, things are sacred under the lens when you don't understand them, and they can
Mm.
change when you understand them. But
Yes.
up
Yes.
until up until you reach that point, the sacredness is there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes. Yes. That's a
it's
good
really,
point to make.
it's a great quote. I love it.
Yes, I thought so too. It and I you could read this last part, and then we might come to a close here. I don't know how long we've been on here.
I think probably around more than an hour. So okay, I'll be further reading the quote. Quote: This is very remarkable addition isn't accepted as genuine on the authority of a single witness, and is regarded as one of the agatha dogmata, or unrecorded traditional sayings of Christ. The meaning of the story is: if thy work is of faith, if thou art thoroughly persuaded in thy own mind, i.e., consciously addressing the impulse dilemma, thou art acting with true insight. But if thy work is not of faith, it is sin. See Romans and Corinthians. What renders the incident improbable is that no Jew would dare openly to violate the law by working on the Shabbat, an act which rendered him legally liable to be stoned.
Yes.
End quote.
So just I just want to say Cambridge didn't write the quotes portion there. I just wrote that to clarify the consciously addressed.
Ah,
So
okay,
but everything else is of Cambridge. So I don't know how well I did in tying this up. I
pretty
probably
well.
okay. I guess I could have. I wish I would have hit upon Strauss a little bit more. Maybe I can do that some other time if you want
Yeah,
to do
we
this.
can try that again. Maybe send me something over from Strauss so I can have a quick read
Yeah,
on it,
yeah.
because I'd love to.
I'd like to reflect on that a bit because they have there's he has a wide I guess there's a bunch of things like seminars and stuff that he's gone through, but I'd have to look and I'd want to choose the correct one or the proper one. That would be
Yeah,
the best introduction there. But but yeah, I
pretty.
don't know if you enjoyed this very
Oh
much,
yeah,
but there were certainly things that you elaborated on and amplified that actually got me thinking. And I was the one who was making this and tried to think this through. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's it's pretty. It's like the Jung work on how things and how he measured how we try to quantify psychic energies. That's really interesting, and this is something which just clicks immediately
Yeah.
when you say, well, like psychic energy has as many like approximate manifestation and quantitative approaches in
Mhm.
the way and like in values and how they set up. And then you can be very conscious of what those values are. If those are yours, you know, which is
Mhm.
great, then
Yeah.
you follow what would be like your path and you, let's say, something like how becoming what you are would be something Nietzsche said, or like the individuation path, which something would be Jungian term on
Mhm.
that. Or if this like, something vampiric. If this like if you're handing over energy, that would be something that's
Ah, I
not
see.
yours by nature. So so in that sense, the reevaluation, what Nietzsche describes of values, is very successful or very useful tool in the sense that it can guide you through those different values. And the way you do it is probably that which was Strauss saying, trying to say, what Strauss said would be like applying the Socratic dialectic on it. So
Yes.
like
Yes.
you go at it with questioning, and then
Mhm.
you go at it with living,
Yes. Yes.
and you don't follow it through from a mere, let's say, um, quote unquote factual or statement point,
Mhm.
but rather in an engaged point. And this is something very important, I think, and also in terms like imagine how those philosophers back then lived and also how they engage with ideas.
Mhm.
And this ties into something you just said. It's like when you read so too much things, you have the simpleton approach. Like you would have a problem having his own thoughts. No,
Yeah.
because you would take in information. You'd always stop questioning those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So in that sense, if you elaborate on ideas, and this is something that feels truer to me, though it's not something I'm not entirely used, obviously. It's like engage with your values in a more questioning mode of things and then act them out, and then in a questioning mode of things and then act them out, and then
Yes.
a
Yes.
questioning. But the engagement of that is like cognition probably has its best use when it's set out similar to you, like you would let a dog go and like run in the wild and
Mhm.
have its way and like follow its instincts. And cognition in a similar sense like needs to be tamed, or not tamed, but it needs to be has its energetic value applied in a way that's more exploratory. And there will be
Mhm.
questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think then something, for at least for me, like I seem to work better with that. But then for me, it works better in a way that I can actually get answers and
Yeah. Yeah.
don't just reproduce, but more like wrestle with it, but then question it and then produce something. Like you have to
Yeah.
have concepts from the fixed state when you understand, like when you work with them fixed state, and then just put them via questions into the fluid mode, and then you can have something new again. It's
Yeah.
also something just that Ernst Jünger said in terms of like just so interesting in terms of the root of language or the hidden mysteries of language. And this is something for the fluid stuff. He noticed that all those question words in German as in English as well, they would be embellished by like by a aquatic sign. or by aquatic letter, let's say, yeah, by aquatic letter. So in German it would be wer, wie, was, wo, something else. So it would be like V, like Wasser or water. So it starts
Yeah.
with W. So it has a fluid nature, and all those questioning words start with W, with the fluid nature of things.
Yes.
So you also have this, the tonal, like the tonal quality of it is, it leads into like watery
Yes.
domain in a sense. So remember this, like in the way how we use questions, they are there for making things fluid again, to make
Yes. I
things
like that.
very dissolved. And
Yes.
in that dissolvement is like actually that what's nurturing.
Yeah.
So you have to dissolve things, like similar when you water a plant.
Mm-hmm.
Like it needs to have the nutrients like in the liquid form so you can absorb. And this is the way you go with questions. Like you liquefy things, you make them very fluid, and then you can absorb them, and then they you can build them into structure. It's very hard to go about this with just building structure from the first place, and then
Mm-hmm.
have things atomatized and just be very fractionated in a sense. And there's very little to build, and it's for you to build.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
That makes sense.
just
You
some
had
closing thoughts.
you constellated something that I remember in McGilchrist, which I'd like to point out because I thought it was so fascinating. Um, McGilchrist talks about language somewhere
Yeah.
in the beginning of Master and His Emissary, and he makes the case that music and rhythm started before the
Mhm.
the production of language, or like the syntax of language. So that's to say that um, we spoke more rhythmically and more, I guess, um,
With
patterned and
what?
musically, and
Yeah.
music actually came before what we know today as language.
Yes.
So, and I'd read that, and I thought, and he makes actually a case for it, and I thought that was so fascinating, and I really like that take.
And
I don't know if you
there's
remember.
a yeah, I remember it. I remember it very well because he made another addendum to that, and that would be like the this is so cool. Um, so pros came for, do I get this right? English words. Pros came for poetry. So the dancing
Oh yeah,
logos became for logos. So the things, how things are, like how they interact with another. That was before, the written word of just
yes, oh yeah, I
flashing.
remember that. I remember that.
I
Yes,
was like, oh, that makes so
yeah,
much sense.
yes, yes.
The engagement with life, like it was more truer to the root of engagement
Hmm.
when those
Yeah,
things had this dancing nature.
yeah,
And this is more like we've drifted in many senses far from that, and that we very factual
yeah,
language,
yeah. That's true.
and not in this, very interrelated domain that
Yeah,
language actually has its root in. So
yeah,
it's, and then again you can apply the schizotypal logician in it, and just use both domains,
yeah, yeah,
but make sure that there's some understanding of what the other domain entails. I think.
yeah,
Though once you get the hook underneath it, it clicks right away,
yeah. Certainly.
and then just language becomes more and more of a tool. Um, and yeah, I think Gilchrist really happy with that
Yeah,
in a
I think
sense
so
of,
too. I think so too.
yeah.
So, I think we might call it there, unless you have anything else
Yeah.
to say, Jules.
No, I think I'm good. I think
Yeah.
I had some nice new ideas here and some could tie some things together.